phase of moon. Third phase.
Good afternoon, good evening, folks, wherever you may be. I'm your host, Dr. J. Andy Elias, and this is Third Phase of Moon Radio Live. We have an amazing show today for you. We have Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., who was the last remaining witness who held the Roswell wreckage in his hand. He's also joined by us with Denise Marcel, his daughter, who's going to be leading the disclosure movement and was also present at the citizen hearing. Before we get that, we got Blake Cousins as well, who is the founder of Third Phase of Moon. Blake, how you doing today?
Doing good, Dr. J. Andy Elias.
I just wanted to tell everyone that Third Phase of Moon is going to be celebrating the 60 million views and the 90,000 subscribers. You guys are getting the word out, and I'm proud to be part of your team, and I want to thank you very much. And I know the folks out there who you're showing the footage to. Why don't you tell people what's coming soon to Third Phase of Moon before we jump into this?
Well, certainly. Well, we just posted this past, 3 days. Incredible footage came in from Indonesia of what looks to be a flying saucer in the night sky, along with many other UFOs, all kinds of activity in the sky. The guy shot it in 2008. He decided he wanted to share it. Nobody's seen the video before, so he put it out on Third Phase of Moon.
And it is an amazing video for that. All you out there, check it out. It's go to YouTube, Third Phase of Moon. Let's jump in right into this. Our guests, the main event, Roswell. For those of you who don't know much about UFOs, I guarantee you heard about Roswell. It is the household name and the number one word associated with UFO. Why? Because this was the one time that the military announced that they had a flying saucer in their hands before they retracted the statement the following day. Now, Major Jesse Marcel was the intelligence officer who was at the ranch checking out the debris field, the so-called famous debris field at the Foster Ranch, right when this incident happened after a couple of days when it crashed. On his way home, he stopped, woke up his wife and his 11-year-old son, who was Dr. Jesse Marcel, and showed him the debris. Dr. Marcel, can you tell us what it is that you saw when your father woke you up?
Well, he came into my bedroom. It was late at night, and he was very excited about something. I didn't know what it was, but he had my mother and myself come into the kitchen to look at some strange material that was on the kitchen floor that he had already distributed out there. And again, he was very excited. He said, won't you all take a close look at this? I think this is parts of I think he said flying saucer. And I wasn't quite sure what a flying saucer was at that moment, but I knew it meant something very strange. And he said, this is one of those flying saucers that's been in the papers lately about, invading the skies all over our country here. And again, he was very excited. And he said, look at all this stuff. And there's some metal debris on the floor. There's some members like little I-beams and some black plastic debris. And he said, first thing I want you to do is look for any electronic components like vacuum tubes, resistors, or condensers, but there wasn't anything like that, but he wanted me to satisfy my own curiosity there. So he said, take a look at this and let me know what you think. And that's where it started.
Dr. Marcel, this is Blake Cousins. I want to ask you this question. Did your dad explain to you what compelled him to put this piece of unknown metal in his possession and bring it home to show you guys? What was he thinking in that state? Did he want to get it out so he wasn't the only one that knew about this and kind of wanted to share it with the family? Was that kind of his way of thinking?
Well, he wanted to share it with us because he knew this is something very strange and something that, like in his words, that we'd never see again. But he was quite convinced this was part of a flying saucer machine, and he wanted my mother and myself to look at this as part of a history, I guess. But again, that's what he was doing.
I want to ask this next question to Denise and then to you, Dr. Marcel. Within the family, after this event happened, what were you guys talking about? Now, clearly, everyone else on this show right now, minus Dr. Marcel, was not alive during this incident, of course. So this all is we heard after the fact. So, Denise, what did you hear growing up?
Well, we were brought up from a really young age believing in UFOs. I think I was probably about 9 years old when he built this huge telescope in our backyard, and so he's always looking up at the stars. And when we would camp out at night, we would look up and see if we could see movement in the sky. So it was just, I don't know. I don't even know exactly how old I was. But I was pretty young, I think. So it was just kind of something it was just always part of the family.
One other thing I wanted to ask you guys is, after this event happened, okay, the movie Roswell that was made by Showtime, it portrayed you when you were 11 years old, Dr. Marcel, that your father gave you some debris and then a couple of days later asked for it back. Did that really happen?
That was poetic license. It was just designed to make a good story better, but no, we didn't keep any of it, and my dad did not keep any of it and give it to me. So, no, we just turned it all in that evening after we finished looking at it.
I would have loved to have a piece of that. To this day, that would have been the greatest thing. Yeah.
Wouldn't we all?
One major thing that's always insulted me, which I would think also would be a major insult to your father, your grandfather, Denise, when General Ramey decided to change the story, he had Jesse Marcel Sr. pose with this weather balloon wreckage when clearly it was switched. What did he say about being the fall guy after this? Because that's insulting to tell an intelligence officer, a major at that what he saw was misidentified as something so common I heard even dogs can recognize.
Well,
here's the thing. Go ahead, Dad.
Well, I was going to say that, it did. Colonel Blanchard, who was the base commander at Roswell, wanted my dad to fly the material into General Ramey's office at Fort Worth to the station out there, because General Ramey was the 8th Air Force commander. And my dad flew the material in a B-29 under armed guard to General Ramey so he could examine this too. And, I think that's where the cover-up started, because years later I saw a photograph of my dad holding a piece of obviously part of a whirlwind target, a radar target, which is obviously not what we saw in Roswell that night. But my dad was a good soldier. He was told not to talk about it, and indeed he was told to tell his family not to ever breathe a word about this again. And so when he got back from Fort Worth, he sat my mother and myself down and said, look, treat this as a non-event. It didn't happen, understand? So you can't talk about it. I said, yes, sir, that's the way it is, and that's the way it stayed for years.
So let's talk about, the darker side of government cover-up, disclosure, keeping secrets from the public that could possibly help mankind. What did you feel threatened? Did your father feel threatened about, not getting this substance out to the public? And how far did they go in threatening your father?
Well, I don't know about any threats to him. Like I say, he was a good soldier, and he's followed orders, so they didn't have to threaten him, actually, to not talk about it. They said, Major Marcel, do not talk about this ever. And so he followed orders, and no threats implied there, but he knew that he was given orders by a general, and he followed them.
I'm going to change gears for real quick. You were both at the citizen hearing, and I know, Denise, we talked off air that you'd like to get involved with disclosure. After witnessing the six retired members of Congress, this congressman and senator, literally transform over those 5 days from skeptics to true believers, what do you think is next, and what would you like to do to get involved, Denise, to push this?
Well, that's a hard question. I've been really thinking about that a lot and trying to figure out what actually can I do to help make a difference. I guess it's just doing shows like this and trying to spread the word out there and say something really incredible. I mean, for my father and my grandfather, happened. I mean, it was a real UFO came down, and so I just really want to try to help to get the movement going. I think what Stephen Bassett's doing is great. I mean, he's had a profound effect on me. I really wasn't involved with it that much. I didn't talk about it too much with anybody except for my family. And now it's like, I really want to try to do something, and I'm trying to find that path, and I'm listening a lot to what Stephen has to say. So that's, maybe eventually writing a book, maybe helping get that out there that way. That might help. I think doing this, what they're trying to do with raising money to try to have a UN hearing would be an amazing thing to do.
Third Phase of Moon, we're the top UFO channel on YouTube, I think because of the transparency. We put out information that people want to hear. The mainstream media has done a very good job for turning this into like a circus, even though the top mind scientists, military men, politicians involved in ufology. What else do we need to get the world to finally wake up and turn the media around to follow these kind of stories and report some of these amazing UFO encounters that we receive all the time right here at Third Phase?
Wow, that's a hard one. I don't know, Dad. What do you think? And what do you think would help get the media involved more? I think maybe if some famous people came out and said that they saw something. Even like this United States is really driven by Hollywood, so. What an amazing thing if maybe some famous actors or something came out. I mean, for goodness, they're making a lot of money on all this UFO stuff. It'd be nice if some of them could come out and maybe say some stuff if they've ever had any experiences.
We actually had recently Russell Crowe talked about seeing something. We know for a fact that President Jimmy Carter and President Ronald Reagan reported UFO sightings. And Blink-182, one of the main guys, Tom DeLonge, turns out to be a big UFO researcher. I don't know if he's ever had any sighting or not, but he's definitely a believer and an advocate. This was actually news to me when I found that out. So some of them are coming out. Shirley MacLaine, another big example, yet it's still not having the effect. The sad thing is because of what the CIA has decided to do, and declassified documents show this, that they're either plausible deniability, just deny everything, or ridicule. And there are two ways of basically having disinformation. They take a truth and they surround it by lies, or they take a lie and surround it by truth. That way, one way or another, the story is tainted. And they've done a great job over the last 60-plus years to suppress this and basically make everybody, just like Blake said, look like a circus. And that's a shame. That's a real shame. And I still think that this Roswell legacy is going to be the biggest thing. When disclosure finally happens, they're always going to go back to Roswell, even though we've had these things. There was an alleged crash in 1896, Aurora, Texas. There was an alleged crash, as late as 8,000 years ago, possibly in China. Anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 years, they estimate. And this isn't the first, but this is the first time that the military stepped up. Now, what I've noticed is, unless a police officer or a government official comes on television and says, hey, look, this is true, then we don't believe it. And that's the way our society has seemed to have gone. And that's a shame. Now, let's go back to Roswell. In 1978, Stanton Friedman uncovered this case by being in Louisiana, and turns out he was speaking to someone who ended up knowing about Jesse Marcel Sr. And Jesse, of course, he spoke. What compelled him to speak 30 years later?
Well, I'm not sure. He was a very avid radio amateur, a ham radio operator. And I guess, they like to shoot the breeze about everything. So I suppose my dad was kind of reminiscing about some strange events here in Roswell. And so he relayed this to his buddy in Baton Rouge, who then relayed the same material ideas to Stanton Friedman. And so that's how it got let out, I guess. And, of course, that was 30 years after the event, too. And my dad thought, well, why not start talking about it? It's been 30 years now, so people probably should really start to know about what happened.
Knowing what you know now, Dr. Marcel, when your father brought home this material, would you have, like the movie did in Showtime, would you have actually taken it in your possession, hid it somewhere safe, and maybe, disclose it now? In hindsight, would you have kept some of the material?
No, I don't think so, because had I done that, I certainly wouldn't have it now, because word would have gotten out. I told my dad about it, and they'd have come and gotten it. As a matter of fact, Bill Brazel, who was the rancher's son, kept a little piece of it in his saddlebags there on the ranch there, and word got out that he had a piece of it, and some very official people came and got it for him.
You know, there was a recent FBI document that actually made the rounds in the 70s. Bruce Maccabee got it out through the Freedom of Information Act, but just recently it was revived through the FBI Vault. It's an online repository of released documents where it said that there were up to 3 discs and up to 3 bodies per disc. Did your father see any other of the crash field, or did he ever talk about the alien bodies?
You know, he never saw those, or at least he denied ever seeing them. Because later my wife asked him point blank a few years ago, did you see the bodies? And he said no, but he knew people who did see them. So they, you know, what they did, they compartmentalized information. There was several sites there they're talking about. My dad was associated with the debris field where there was just parts of the flying saucer there, and the main body of the craft must have come down some distance away. And the bodies, if they were there, that's where they were found. But my dad was not associated with that part of the craft.
When your father brought home the material, did it seem like a family event, like gather around, it's kind of Christmas Day, let's open up the presents? And if so, did it almost seem maybe proper enough? I'm not sure. Been quite a long time ago. The cameras nowadays are a lot more readable. Did you have cameras in your home to take family photos, maybe take a picture of the metal itself?
Oh, I'm sure we had cameras. My dad was an amateur photographer too, but unfortunately we did not take any pictures of it. So all I can do is just relate what I saw spread out on the kitchen floor with my dad kind of hovering over, just jumping up and down with excitement.
You know, you recreated. Oh, go on, Blake.
How the metal responded and the characteristics of the metal. Like they say that it's flattened out. You could crumple it up like tinfoil, and then it'd flatten out perfectly flat. Is this correct? And can you go into a little bit more detail on that?
Sure. Well, you know, I didn't really witness that part of it. You know, because all I did was just hold it, and I didn't try to bend it or tear it or stretch it or anything like that. But my dad later described. Guys in his office tried to bend a piece of it with a sledgehammer, and it wouldn't stay bent. In other words, you could deform it, but it would pop right back out again. So, but unfortunately, I did not see that. But my dad talked about that later. So I have no doubt that it really was like that.
I was first exposed to this case in 1988, seeing that documentary, which included your father's testimony from Stanton Friedman from 1978, and he talked about that this debris could not be burnt, it could not be smashed, and he talked about all these characteristics that you were saying. But one thing that you were able to contribute to the ufology world and the whole general public was your recreation of this I-beam. And there were these symbols that you described as looking like Egyptian hieroglyphics. Now, there have been several other cases that people say the same thing. They've seen weird-looking symbols on there. They're not quite Egyptian, but they are some sort of symbols. There was a famous case, I'm sure you know this because you were at the citizen hearing, the Bentwaters case. Well, Sergeant Jim Peniston, when he came home, he actually drew, or actually at the site itself of this object, he drew the symbols on there. Have you ever compared the symbols on the I-beam to anything else?
Well, you know, they were familiar with some of the other drawings that people have made. You know, again, they were, you know, when I first saw that, they were written along the inner surface of this I-beam, like strut there. And there looked like purplish writing on it, purple, violet hued writing. And I thought at first it was Egyptian hieroglyphics, but it wasn't that. It was more like geometric symbols, you know, truncated pyramids, balls, circles, triangles of various shapes, and just kind of imprinted on the inner edge of this thing. And in some respects, it did resemble some of the other symbols that people have drawn.
The metal retrieved, do you think it's in Area 51, or where do you think it would be located in present day? Well,
you know, I just heard rumors that it was brought to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, and that may be where it is now. They may have divided it up among other areas too, like Area 51 or some air base someplace. But as far as I know, it was brought to Wright-Patterson Air Base, because I think there was a secretary there at the Wright-Patterson Air Base, June Crane, you may be familiar with her, and she described somebody bringing a piece of metal in, like what we saw, years later, and she's under strict orders to keep silent about that, so she didn't talk about that until she was on her deathbed, really.
And you brought in a very important point. Over the years, there have been so many witnesses that have come forward. I mean, scores and scores and scores of them. And then when Walter Haut passed away, he left this memo that was to be released 5 years after his death, which basically confirmed everything. What else do you think do we expect more of these post-death statements to come from these people that are still living? I mean, the problem is this event was so long ago. These witnesses are starting to pass away because of time, and it's kind of sad because we want to keep this case obviously open, and it very much is. There's several books written, and as a matter of fact, this is a great time to throw in your book, which is The Roswell Legacy, for all you listeners out there. I believe you could purchase it on Amazon. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And in there, you basically just described everything to the detail of what happened with your father, what he said, and to keep this man's stature, because he was a patriot. Your man was a true intelligence hero. And on top of that, he actually kept his word. This is another thing that another ufologist told me. In the 40s and 50s, when the government told you to shut up, you shut up. You listened to them. But the problem is over the years, we've seen all these scandals come, and the trust from the general public of our government is really not the same. So I could imagine nowadays that people telling them to follow one way, they're probably not going to be listening like they were right after World War II. Now, this goes back to the citizen hearing, and I guess this poses this question to both of you. Now, during the citizen hearing, you heard from all the other countries, and it was just a phenomenal group of people. What, in both of your opinions, what were the most impacting statements, and from what people?
Well, Steve Greer had some thoughts about the science behind these flying saucers, and some of the witness statements also were quite interesting, like those from that English place where where they saw this flying saucer or some lights in the woods there.
Yeah, the Bentwaters.
Bentwaters, yeah, okay. But their statements are pretty important because they tend to confirm what a lot of other people say too. That's all true.
What about you, Denise? What do you think?
Well, for me, it was the military people are what really impressed me. I mean, those people from Santa Maria, I believe, from Peru, when he was ordered to shoot down a flying saucer, basically, and so, well, he was a military man, and I that blows my mind. I mean, that they would actually ask him to shoot it down. That was pretty crazy. Then I thought the Uruguay, where they have full disclosure out there. I mean, I believe they said they teach it in their schools back there. So I found that pretty amazing too.
I definitely believe that, because that is actually, a lot of those countries are finally opening their books. Anyway, Blake had a great question, and I'm gonna mention Go ahead, Blake.
We at Third Phase Moon just released a documentary from a correspondent out of Seattle. We're asking people from around the world if they have a camera, they want to get into journalism and become a documentarian themselves in regards to the UFO phenomenon. By all means, do it, and we'll showcase your UFO documentary right here on Third Phase. And the correspondent, Eric McCarthy, out of Seattle, Washington, made contact with Tom Ogle, and he captured an amazing UFO event he's actually seen 5 UFOs in his life right there in Seattle from his apartment, and we posted this video up just 12 hours ago, and he's capturing flying saucers, discs covering. At one point there's a helicopter that intercepts right up to the UFO and then immediately takes off. Incredible video and testimony, and we're wanting people around the world to submit their documentaries and go out there and do your own investigative skills and put something together, and we sure would like to showcase it. My question to both of you, have you guys ever seen a UFO for yourself? And to think that you actually held in your hand an extraterrestrial substance that was part of a spaceship is quite extraordinary. You must think about this in your head quite often.
Well, I've seen some kind of strange things, but I'm not sure I've ever seen a genuine UFO. But there you have, because if you look in the night sky, you can see all kinds of things. Like, for example, I was flying back from to Creek in Iraq to Balad, in a Black Hawk a couple of years ago, and you fly with the lights out, because you don't get shot down if somebody can see you. So we had just night vision goggles, and I saw this light floating over the desert, going up towards Turkey, and it was traveling real fast. I knew that. Oh, what kind of aircraft is that? Because it had actually a visible light, and no one was flying around with visible lights at that time. So, but this is just a light in the sky, and God only knows what it was. But that's the strangest thing I've ever seen.
We're coming to a break in about a quick minute, but I'm going to ask this question, and we'll talk about it right after. It is my belief that nowadays things are no longer in the military hands. That way they don't have to answer to the general public. They don't have to live by the Constitution. If everything has been taken out of the military hands and placed into these private military contractors for research and development, then really they aren't answerable to us anymore. And that's a scary thought. I don't know how to get around that, but there still has to be some sort of military presence, I guess, at these things. And if you also remember, General Eisenhower, at his closing speech, what he said was he warned us about the military-industrial complex. Rather than bragging about what he did in his presidency like other presidents, oh, I lowered the tax rate, I lowered the unemployment rate. He didn't do that. He warned us. My belief is that he was cut out of the private, I guess, MJ-12 or private programs that he set up. And near the end of his term, he was probably just cut out of his own thing. What do you think about this theory that it's in private hands? Briefly, real quick, as we go to a question, we'll be picking it right up after the music. Either one of you, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had to run a...
break. In 1991, I was in Washington where I was contacted by somebody in the Capitol to come talk to him about the UFO, that I saw in Roswell. So I went up there and we talked in a secure room where there was no recording devices or cameras or anything like that. And I asked him, when are you guys going to turn this stuff loose? And he says, we don't have it. And he said it's in the hands of what he called the black government. These are people who are not elected. They have unlimited funds and answer only to each other. So I don't think the military has that much to do with it anymore. But it's in the hands of some clandestine, government agency.
Denise,
that's what I think so
what do you
too. Yeah, I completely, I 100% agree with that. I think it's when it comes to this kind of thing, there's probably a lot of money that wants to have that technology, and so they probably bought it or something. Yeah, I think big corporations have got their hands into it.
We haven't come to the break yet. They might have changed the break schedule, which might be all for the better. But at that matter, let's just keep going on with this. Let me ask you this, Dr. Marcel. You are a patriot, and you served in the military, and you are a true American hero for your service, and we honor you that. I just got to say one thing, though. Did you have any disdain for the military for what they did to your father?
No, actually not, because he kept things close to his chest, so he didn't really talk about it that much, and I know he stayed in the military several more years after that, and he got out to go take care of his mother in Louisiana. But again, it didn't seem to affect him that much. But again, he was like I said, a soldier who just followed orders and didn't really question them, as far as I know. Maybe in his own mind he did, but openly he did not do that.
Growing up, I'm sure, Denise, you saw this probably since you were taught. Dr. Marcel, they've probably come and interviewed. There have been several researchers ever since 1978 that have written books and that have made trips to Roswell even after you've left to Montana. What year was that, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, we moved here in '71.
Okay, and anyway, the point being, people were still investigating this, and they were coming to Roswell looking for the crash site, hoping that there might be some debris left, and I'm sure they were talking to other witnesses and coming back to you. Denise, what did you see growing up? Did you see all these investigators coming in and out or answering the phone of somebody who was calling to ask some questions about Roswell?
Oh, well, no, not really, because no, I didn't really hear. Where we grew up, it was we had one phone line, and it was like a party line. So a lot of calls, we weren't allowed on the phone that much because my dad was a doctor and he was busy with his practice, and there weren't a lot of people calling at that time. I don't think it really started to hit until I actually moved away from home, until like the later like the 80s is when it really, I think, really took hold. That's what I think. I mean, that's what it seemed like to me.
That would make sense, because in the 80s is when this really blew up, and more witnesses started to come out, because they know that there's power in numbers. 1, 2, 3 people, sadly, knock on wood, I hate to say this, they can silence them in any way. As we know from Loretta Proctor and other witnesses that were truly threatened with their lives, who had nothing to do with the military, were just innocent witnesses that happened to be in, and I like to say the right place, but that was the wrong place for that being told. But there's scores and scores of people that have come out. Mr. or Dr. Marcel, have you been doing your own research on Roswell? What have you uncovered?
Well, I'm not a researcher. I'm just an observer of that one event there. But what it did do was trigger a strong interest in astronomy and cosmology. Like Denise said, I built a 14-inch telescope there in the backyard here in Helena. But I read a lot about astronomy, the new findings, the Kepler telescope that's finding planetary systems, widespread. So we know that there's, up to a few years ago, we had no idea if there were other planets outside of our solar system, but now they're finding them by the hundreds. So, most of these are not habitable, but some of them are quite Earth-like. And so that gives food for thought that, hey, if we're here on an Earth-like planet and there's others out there, so why not others just like us, who are maybe a little bit more advanced than we are and can travel the distances between the stars that we sure couldn't do right now. But I think that sooner or later we will be.
You are so correct about what you're saying, that we didn't know about solar systems. In the 80s, the science books that were there said we are the only solar system in the galaxies, if not the whole universe. Actually, I think it was the universe, they said. Then we started saying, okay, the Kepler telescope came out, started finding extraterrestrial planets. Then it started finding these Goldilocks planets, which they considered to possibly be habited. Now they estimate that there's as many as 10,000 habitable planets in our galaxy alone. And these are from looking in areas that used to be nothing with the Hubble telescope, and all of a sudden now they're finding stars and planets there. It's I think the height of human arrogance to say that we are the only sentient beings in this universe. I mean, it would be an awful waste of space, just like the movie Contact, if we were, and that's why I don't believe it is. Now, the younger generation is truly much more open-minded, and that's one thing I think that's pushing this disclosure movement, making it so much stronger, because if you ask any high school kid or college student, they're going to say that of course they believe in life. If they don't believe that UFOs have visited us or UFOs are extraterrestrial, at the least they're going to say, yes, we believe that there is life on other planets, whether they have visited us or not. But I think that's where is important, because these people in 20, 30 years, I mean, it's a no-brainer. They're going to be leading the world. So it lies in them. Now, I don't know if it's taking the original MJ-12 members to pass away to finally get the secrecy out there, or maybe they got themselves so deep in this hole by maybe killing some people, such as one of the people they say that that was murdered over this was the defense, or it wasn't the defense secretary. It was one of the original MJ.
Forrestal.
Yes, James Forrestal, exactly. Secretary James Forrestal. And that was sad. That's just the one that we know of. God knows how many others. And there are people that have come around saying, a widow that said, I lost my husband because of this. And in Dr. Greer's movie, he states several people that have died over this thing. And it's really sad. I think it's time that news comes out. And just as John Podesta said, we can handle it. The people can handle it. Not too long ago, a friend of mine was talking to me, and I always thought it was, I didn't understand why Dr. Greer switched gears. He was all in the Disclosure Project, and then all of a sudden he started working on free energy. And I didn't know why he abandoned it. And speaking with a friend recently, he said, it doesn't have to do with the aliens. I think that they know, the government knows we can handle it, but it has to do with the technology, because the 600 trillion petrodollar empire would collapse overnight if they know how we can use the technology that's on this craft. And that makes much more sense of them hiding intelligent beings, because we truly can handle that. Now, what do you think is it going to take? Because there's several people out there who've worked on free energy machines, and they're being suppressed. There's several patents that have been confiscated in the name of national security. I mean, it's just a mess. It truly is a mess. Now, I wanted to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I'm just wondering if the military doesn't have a big hand in it, if those corporations have that, a lot of that material that they're trying to use it to create their own thing, and they don't want to share that. I think that's a good possibility.
What about you, Dr. Marcel?
It's really hard to get that out of there.
Yeah.
Again, my thought is the military really doesn't have that much to do with it, but I think that there's a lot of research going on, a lot of reverse engineering, which is trying to find bigger and better ways to fly airplanes and things like that. But but the technology is there, and it's just a matter of us reverse engineering it. And it may be very difficult to do that, because it'd be almost like giving Leonardo da Vinci a digital wristwatch and tell him to repeat it, to build one like it. And he couldn't do it because he didn't have the technology to do that. So we may have to advance further along the stream here to have the technology to be able to really reverse engineer to find out what kind of systems they use to travel interplanetary distances.
You hit the nail on the head. Actually, a famous researcher also said something very similar. If we gave Christopher Columbus a car or anything, grab a computer and said, here, you have an unlimited budget, go ahead and build it, there's no way he would have done it. I mean, he couldn't have done it because the technology hadn't progressed. Now, maybe in 1947, we weren't quite at the peak, but as you can see, I mean, if you said 20 years ago that you could stand on one corner of the planet and speak to somebody on the other corner of the planet, and while you're at it, take a photograph and maybe even see them video phone. I mean, if you said the smartphones would exist 20 years ago, everyone would have laughed. And now look at it. Everyone's traveling with a pocket computer, and we can do amazing things with this. Now, if this is what civilians are using, can you imagine what the military is using?
Oh yeah, it's you just can't imagine what what research is developing now. I was in the military for about 35 years and got familiar with a lot of the technology, but boy, there's a lot under the covers that no one else knows about, and it's almost frightening to what our capabilities are now, military-wise.
Are you familiar with Colonel Corser, and have you read his book, The Day After Roswell?
Yeah, Corso. Yeah, I didn't read it, but my wife Linda did, and he talks about reverse engineering and says that a lot of commonplace materials now, like transistors, and where it came from reverse engineering. And I don't really say no, but I guess I'm a little bit of a skeptic that way, but who knows? I don't discount anything.
What about you, Denise? Have you read his book, or have you read any other UFO-related books?
Oh yeah, I have. It's been a while since I've read a UFO book. I did read his book. It was quite a while ago, to be honest with you. And I'm sorry, my memory's not 100% on that.
Well, either way, he did a great job in basically bridging the gap, saying that what Roswell, he had Roswell artifacts. This is an alleged story. Obviously, it's hard to confirm, and some people, some respected ufologists even don't believe his story. Others do. But I'm on the fence, and I'm starting to tend to believe that it's possibly true because he hand-delivered some of these artifacts to the research and development departments of I think it was not AT&T at the time. One of them went to GM, IBM, different places. And like you said, Dr. Marcel, they created transistors, cell phones, Kevlar, night vision were all attributed to Corso. And right before he passed away, he said, give it to the people. We deserve it. We need it. There's no need for the secrecy anymore. And sure enough, he passes away. And then that's a whole other debate. Yeah, exactly. But we've also had other whistleblowers. We've had Bob Lazar, who came out in the 80s, and he was ridiculed. And people say that they looked for his records. If someone worked at S4 and Los Alamos, they would have had a college degree. When they went to Caltech and MIT, they couldn't find it. They say they graduated the list of his class in high school and all these different things. Well, George Knapp, an investigative reporter in Las Vegas, found a phone book from Los Alamos that had Bob Lazar listed, not in the janitor section either, in one of the labs. Now, obviously, if he's a government scientist in the laboratory in the phone book, clearly this man is capable of working at the job that he said he held. And he was very detailed of what he said. He said there was 9 hangars and 9, I think there was 2 empty. 7 of them contained different crafts. One was tilted up on its side. One was damaged. One looked very sleek-like. Another looked like a top hat. And then this kind of went, stayed a little quiet. It would pop up here and there. Recently, we've had Dr. Dan Burrish, who's come out, another whistleblower, and he confirmed Bob Lazar's story. So we're getting more and more of these people actually confirming this rather than doing the opposite and discrediting their story. And I hope people listening out there, if any of you have been involved in this military or this CIA cover-up, or you have something to tell, give it to the people. We deserve it. We can handle it. And I don't know what else it's going to take. Thank God for this alternative media, because if it wasn't for the ability of YouTube, we wouldn't be able to broadcast the footage that is not going on CNN. Surely what we're receiving at Third Phase of Moon on a daily basis is not shown on any of the news, and that's sad. So I think in one way they have a double-edged sword. The government likes the fact that we have technology and everything is electronic because we can get shut down with an electromagnetic pulse. No one can run to their ATM. What are you going to do at that point? But on the other hand, you got Skype. You can do anything you want. You got YouTube. And I think these advancements may have been in place. Stephen Bassett even said they may have done this on purpose so they can kind of help us push for the disclosure, because if it's not going to happen by the government, it's going to take the people to happen.
Well, I think as time goes on, there'll be more and more people coming out with us. So,
back to, I guess, Roswell. When you guys, growing up after this incident happened, did you talk of what it might be? Maybe if it was an alien, maybe it was a time traveler, or maybe it was an interdimensional device. What did you think about it?
For me, well, I always thought this was probably interplanetary. It came from another solar system. And, you talk about time travel, theoretically, it may be possible. I know Mitchell Kaku, a scientist, had a program about time travel the other day, but it seems like you can go into the future, but you can't go into the past with the time travel that we know about, at least the possibility of it. And with quantum entanglement of particles, which tend to defy the time sequence there. But, I don't know. They may be interdimensional, there's supposed to be other universes in other dimensions, like the multiverse type thing. But I guess I'm old enough now. I'm not really into that, but I kind of think that they're from our own galaxy or even other galaxies.
I agree, and they also say that the grays, especially the possibly the ones that were bodies at the Roswell crash, actually come from Zeta Reticuli. That's, what some sources said. Again, how do we confirm this? I want to go back to what we just said about Michio Kaku. I saw that very same program, and truthfully, I never believed in time travel. I just thought it was a complete fantasy. And despite being believing in UFOs, I just couldn't grasp the fact that it's possible. I just don't see it happening. So when I saw that program, it opened up my mind a little bit and I said, okay, fine. Maybe we can go into the future, but okay, it's never going to happen. And then I started looking at the history, and you can clearly see, cave paintings from 30,000 years ago, even older, that are showing these objects in the sky. Then you see Renaissance paintings of the Virgin Mary or Jesus on the cross, right, with saucers in the background. Well, if Michio Kaku says once we build the time machine, we can only go from forward, or we can go back to the day the machine was built. Some people suggest that these beings have left these devices on Earth for eons. Anywhere from hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years if they've been visiting us that long, or 10,000 years, whatever it may be. So maybe it is possible. But nonetheless, I'm still on the fence about that. Let me go to Dr. Hynek real quick. Were you following him in Project Blue Book throughout the years?
Who, me? Actually, no, I was not even familiar with that at that time, Project Blue Book.
Dr. Hynek, obviously, he started out as the chief debunker for the U.S. Air Force. He was hired to do that, and he made some of the worst explanations, the famous swamp gas.
Swamp gas.
Yeah. But at the end, he became the biggest advocate for UFOs, and I thought that was one of the greatest things, because it just shows that their own person, their own inside man that was supposed to destroy this ufology in general, ended up being this biggest advocate. But he said that he believes these things might be interdimensional because they seem to jump from place to place. And he made a very interesting statement that's always stuck in my mind. If they were visiting from light years away, wouldn't they hang around for a while? But then again, that goes to the other theory that they've been hanging around for a while. They're just watching us grow before they interact with us.
Yeah, they've been around for thousands of years. But even caveman art depicts some very suspicious looking like craft in the sky, and that, like you say, that Renaissance painting with the Virgin Mary and child, having an obvious UFO in the sky. There was a dog even looking at it. So they've been around for a long time.
Well, look at what was it like in Puma Punka. The rock, how they carved out those rocks. It's like perfect 90-degree angles and stuff, from thousands of years ago. We barely have the technology to do it as good as they did 1,000 years ago.
You're absolutely correct there, and not just Puma Punku. On every continent except Antarctica, even in Antarctica, there seems to be some speculation that under the glacier there seems to be some anomalous activity, but I can't really confirm that. But I do know, like you said, Puma Punka, there are places in South America, there are places in Europe, there are places in Africa that just defy the ability that we can't recreate things. Japan, not too long ago, tried to build a pyramid using the same, I guess, alleged way, and they were building it 1/3 the scale or maybe even smaller, and they couldn't do it. What does that show right there? That we did it over 3,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, but we can't do it now. That's a scary thought. And every religion, even the Bible, Christianity, if people read it more literally and less, I guess, what's the word I'm trying to look for?
More of like a history book, kind of?
Yeah, if they looked at it less symbolically and more literally, there's so many references to beings coming down from the heavens. And when they spoke of the heavens, they meant, the sky, anything coming up. If you were to see an alien or a craft land and something come out and then that thing fly, and you were an artist, and because the literary rate at the time was not very high, so not many people can read and write, and of course there was no printing press and all this during the time of Jesus, but nonetheless, what better way to depict to everybody else that this being flies than add wings? So it's my opinion that maybe these angel sightings were not really beings with wings, but maybe the artist was trying to portray that these sort of beings were coming down and had the ability of flight. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's certainly possible because, how it, they describe these Ezekiel's wheels or these flaming spears or seals, flying seals, and they describe these things in their own terms, not in ours. So, I think they're seeing the same things that we're seeing, except we describe it in a different way because we're a little, we have more heads up on that than they did.
We can catch it on film.
That's very true. The sad thing is lately, everybody has the ability to fake photos, and that's the problem. We're seeing so much,
True.
But it's hard to discern what's true and what's not. Now, we got a vast archive of Third Phase of the Moon. We let the public decide. We take the journalistic point of view is if the photo looks credible, we'll put it out there, or the video, and let the people decide. Many times, the witness actually comes forward, and you can clearly tell in the Skype interviews that we conduct with them, they're all on Third Phase of the Moon, the passion behind these people and what you're seeing in the video. And there's many cases in there that I think are just truly undeniable. I mean, unless these are award-winning actors in disguise, I don't think you can really fake the kind of emotion they're showing. So just like you said, everyone's got a camcorder in their pocket virtually nowadays, and they can capture these things. But go on.
I guess I was going to say that some UFO photographs go back over 100 years, and that's before they could do these computer enhancements and things like that. There's one for sure that was taken back in the 1880s, right after photography was being developed, and it's clearly a flying saucer in the sky, UFO. And in the 50s there was a lot of pictures, like 1957 and 58 off the coast of Brazil. There's an IGY boatload of scientists out there taking pictures of clearly very strange-looking craft, and that was before a computer would enhance it. So even McMinnville, there's photographs, taken in the 50s that before computers that clearly show something very strange.
You are so 100% true with that there are so many photos that exist pre-Roswell. Like you said, going back to 1880, I've seen some great photos from 1910, 1925, different periods where, like you said, there was no way for them to fake it. I mean, you can't, there was no computers then. You couldn't do Photoshop. You couldn't do other things. And then you have this airship mystery. When people were moving to the West Coast, when there was nothing here, just like the Clint Eastwood movies where it was just desert and little towns here and there connected by rails, and everybody had to go from horseback or wagon from place to place, and they were seeing these airships, and the only thing in the sky at the time, aside from birds, was balloons, and there weren't that many of these balloons, hot air balloons that were apparently being used since the 18th century, and that doesn't fit or describe what people were seeing in this airship mystery. So clearly, like you said, this has been going on for years and years, and there's no way to deny it. And it's sad that this was accepted, centuries ago, but now it seems to be a taboo. Thank God it's changing a little bit. Now,
wasn't there like that Battle of L.A. or something like that too, where they in the 40s or something that they thought that they shut L.A. down practically.
Yes, actually, we just had Jose Escamilla a couple weeks ago, and he is producing a movie, The Battle of L.A., and the trailer's out. It's really amazing. What happened there was, I think it was 1942, and as you know, we just were bombed at Pearl Harbor, so everyone was on edge. And there's a photo on the cover of LA Times which shows our spotlights shining in on this object. We shot over 1,400 rounds of anti-aircraft ammunition, and this thing wouldn't go down or go away. It was just staying in there. And the sad thing is the response, or the military response to this of afterwards, was, it was wartime jitters. We were shooting at nothing. And then this photograph is out. So then they say, well, okay, we can't say we were shooting at nothing, so let's say we're shooting at a balloon. Are you telling me that 1,400 rounds were We're coming to break. We're going up and not taking this down. Everybody stay tuned. We're having an amazing show. As you can tell, we're talking with the original Roswell witness right here at Third Phase of Moon Radio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this message. That's right, folks. We are back. Third Phase of Moon Radio live. We are researchers on a mission on the quest for the truth. We have been speaking to Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr., who was the last remaining Roswell witness who actually held the wreckage in his hand and is speaking about it, and his daughter, Denise Marcel, who's going to be leading the disclosure movement and was present at the citizen hearing and knows so much about this case and this whole topic as a whole. We have so much more to talk about. But during the break, we actually had a caller. Caller 808. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Well, this is Blake Cousins. I know we do have another coming in, but yep, I'm here back again, and definitely been listening to the Marcel conversation. Absolutely fascinated. I know there's people listening right now that want to call in and ask the question, so we're just waiting for the switchboards to light up here. As far as getting disclosure, I think, like you were saying earlier, Dr. J. Andy Elias, is that the people are going to do it, and I think that's what sets Third Phase of Moon apart, because we're out there talking with the people. Actually, MUFON's dropped the ball in regards to taking reports and doing a serious investigation on it. We get the complaints all the time that you're the only people that listen to us. Third Phase of Moon, if it wasn't for you, nobody would hear the story, even want to listen. And that's what I think we take pride on that. We want to get people's word. We want to take their testimony, get their evidence, and showcase it, and not be people out there to ridicule somebody if their story is fantastic. Third Phase of Moon has a lot of, colorful language sometimes in regards to the subject matter, and I think that's a good indicator in itself that we're doing something right, because when people don't know something, they usually tend to get angry about it and, get scared, and that's a problem people have. But if you open up your mind, and that's what we ask the people, is open up your mind, take a look at it, be subjective, and, come away with what you believe in, and then leave your comments. And that's what we're trying to do on Third Phase of Moon. Now, back to, the metal. I wish we could showcase that, because right here, we're not afraid of, putting this sensitive material out if we had it in possession. If there's a free energy machine, if there's a downed UFO or an alien body, we want it, we want to see it, and we're going to put it out there so fast that it can't be stopped. And that's our mission right here at Third Phase. What do you think about that, Dr. J. Andy Elias, on the mission and a follow-up on a question?
We absolutely are pushing it out there, Blake. And like I was saying before when you got disconnected, we're doing a great job of putting out what everyone else is not showing. CNN, Fox News, all that, they're not doing their job. And if it wasn't for venues like YouTube and the Internet, there would be this open exchange of ideas. Now, as I was saying, we had a caller, and it turned out to be you, but we actually do have that caller back. Caller 808, what's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Desmond. I'm calling from Hawaii.
Excellent, Desmond. Do you have a question for one of our guests or hosts?
Well, my name's Desmond Wayne. I have actually a couple comments for, is that Jesse Marcel Jr.'s daughter? What's her name?
Denise Marcel.
Denise. She was mentioning that she'd like to get in the information to disclosure, and I was wondering if she ever heard of Wayne Herschel's star maps that he discovered.
No, I don't know anything about that.
I think it might be a good thing for you to possibly get yourself familiar with. Can I plug his website?
Sure.
It's thehiddenrecords.com. You guys should really check that out because, as a ufologist for 20 years, I never got to hold in my hands parts of a UFO, so I really longed for some kind of proof, and I didn't really feel that I got it until I saw this guy's star maps, because when you realize that all these ancient cities are, the pyramids laid out to resemble the same 11 stars, then you go back to Sidonia and you look at the so-called anomalies and they're laid out to the same 11 stars. What are the odds of that happening by coincidence.
That's
So I would say that's good information. Another question I'd like to ask you, Denise, is obviously the fact that your father held these parts, you're much more personally connected, so you know that your father is no liar. And how has that affected your ability to research, knowing that somewhere there is a red herring, as opposed to someone who might not know?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I don't even really know how to answer that question. Can you repeat that for me?
Well, it's kind of like now that I've seen the star maps, I have much more ambition in my research because I know I'm not wasting my time now.
Right.
So I guess my question would have been, has that given you a lot more ambition, the fact that this is your father and you know that he's telling you the truth?
No, absolutely, 100%. I don't think I would be, as interested in this subject as I am without that happening to my father like that. And I don't know if a lot of people may not know this, but I did do a hypnosis session with my father in 1997 with a person named Dr. Neil Hibbler. And, when he retold the story and when he was in hypnosis, it just even solidified it more for me. Not that it wasn't ever solidified before that, but it's just like, he really did see something. There was really something that happened there. And it's about time that we find out what that is. I mean, it's too long now. My father's dedicated his life to the military. I think he deserves to know the truth.
I agree. Did he, was he able to remember more details when you just had the hypnotic session?
No, it pretty much remained the same. I mean, that was also, I think he could see things, like I remember he could see like the wallpaper, like the prints on the wallpaper, and he remembered seeing his dad really clearly at that moment too, which was really just, it was, in his face is just the emotional reaction. It was just amazing. And it's like, so I know he experienced something completely amazing.
You mentioned the print on the wallpaper. Dr. Marcel, can you go in, tell us about that?
Well, I don't remember the wallpaper. I just remember the debris itself at this point, and the fact it was on a tile floor in our kitchen, about an 8 by 10 foot square tile floor, and I could visualize the kitchen itself, and my dad, my mother, of course, being there too. So, but all I do is just close my eyes, and I can just see it just like it was yesterday.
Now, they say that this debris was really light. Were there large chunks that you picked up and felt like they weighed like a feather?
Well, I only saw a very small part of the whole thing. What my dad had done was to pick up representative portions of this and put it in some boxes in the back of our 1942 Buick at that time. And I guess most of the debris was carried by a CIC agent back to Roswell, to the air base, and in a carryall. So he probably had more of it. So, but I saw, the metal debris, which was very light, very flimsy actually, and but it's really flimsy, but it was more substantial than say the aluminum wrap that we have today. But it was like feathers.
And just like your father, Jesse Marcel Sr., said that this cannot be bashed up, this cannot be burnt. I mean, that's right there that makes sense why they would want to hide it. First of all, as Stan Friedman says, when this came out, what are you going to tell the people? By the way, there's other beings that live out there. They come and go into our skies that we can't control them using these exotic technologies. I mean, yes, that would have been a little foolish at the time. But now, with all our technology, I think it's time that we can address this. We can actually deal with the fact that they have this better technology because our technology's gotten better.
Yeah, we're on the verge of cracking the code. There's NASA has a study about alternative space propulsion, and they talk about how you can, if you have enough energy, you can actually warp space and time so that you don't violate the Einstein's speed of light limit. Space can travel infinitely fast, although if you're in that space traveling faster than the speed of light, you're not violating Einstein's law of speed of light.
That's so true. Actually, recently we had John Searle, who was the godfather of free energy, and just like Nikola Tesla, he was given dreams, and over his life he built 3 devices that were actually powering for free energy. He had this incident where in England, where he lives, they took him to jail alleging that he didn't pay the electric bill of theft. But really, it wasn't theft, because all he did was use his energy device to power his home, and he wasn't stealing from the electric company. So it was a terrible shame. Then he went to jail, came out. Sure enough, his devices were confiscated, and we're really hoping that someone up there will step up to this challenge and take the knowledge that he has and go on with it, either build another machine or fund this next one. Real quick, I just want to give the call-in number for out there for all the listeners. You've got questions for these amazing guests. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. We urge you to, if you got any questions about Roswell that you want to ask the man himself, call in, area code 347-474-7228. The show extension is 818. Once again, it's 347-474-7228. Show extension 818. And without further ado, Blake Cousins, I know he had a burning question to ask. And Blake, go ahead and take it.
Well, the metal always fascinates me, and I want to get back to the moment that your father brought it home and what his state of mind was. And let's go into detail. Were you sleeping at that moment? Were you guys awake? Was it during dinner time? Can you go into detail what he was explaining, like kind of verbatim what he's saying? Okay, son, this is metal from a flying saucer, etc. Go ahead, Dr. Marcel.
Yeah, sure. It was, of course, during summertime, and I was enjoyed playing with, riding a bicycle with my friends and all that. So, I was late. I had been asleep for several hours before he came in, and I do remember that he was so excited that he couldn't, he had to show what he found out there. And when I first saw this, I thought, why is he waking me up in the middle of the night just to see this bunch of trash on the floor there and just scrap metal on the floor? But his excitement caught on, and I realized then that this is something that's very unique. And again, that's the reason I remember it, because it made a very strong impression on me.
Did he say to you, son, like, we are not alone in this universe, and this came from extraterrestrials from another planet? Did he kind of state it that way?
Well, he said, I recall, I think he said this is parts of a flying saucer, and with all the momentum of that. I wasn't, again, I wasn't really following the headlines of all these spacecraft or these craft in the skies, but I soon, got the idea that this may be something really extraterrestrial, and a flying saucer, the connotation was that this came from someplace else, and his excitement just kind of drilled it into me.
John, do we still have Wayne from Hawaii on the line? I'm sure.
I believe that was just him.
Yeah.
Wayne, you got a question?
Am I on with you guys?
Yeah, you are. You're on live radio.
I wanted to know if Jesse Marcel was familiar with David Rudiak's reading the General Remy memo in '99.
Yeah, as it turned out, in General Ramey's office, Bon Johnson, who was a photographer for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, was called in to take pictures. And General Ramey happened to have a memo in his hand as Bon Johnson was taking the picture. And, of course, he must have had a very good sharp focus on his camera, because later you could take that same photograph and computer enhance the memo that Ramey had. And the memo, described victims of the wreck and things like that could not have been associated with a balloon. So that pretty well cinched it right there.
That was the point I wanted to ask you about the victims. It seems to me, I don't have an exact number, but 75 years, the government's come out and basically said all the descriptions of this little being with the big head and the big eyes was a lie. Well, not only do we now have David Rudiak reading the memo validating victims, but we also have these little skeletons coming out of the Yucatan. You know, one that Dr. Greer showed on Serious Disclosure, that was 6 inches tall, but we have the star child, and its DNA has been confirmed to be non-terrestrial, but the mitochondrial DNA was human, meaning that its father and its mother could have been a lizard for all we know, but it was born as a human, which validates all the abduction claims. And my question to you is, now that we have skeletons and DNA, shouldn't this kind of lend a lot more credibility to the original reports from people like your father?
Oh, sure. It's gradually coming out. The information is just dripping out slowly but surely, and it'll soon reach, well, hopefully soon reach critical mass where people will say, "Aha, we knew this all along, and look, here's the proof." So hopefully it'll happen before I die, but if it doesn't, I still know what it was. So I just like to be able to tell people I told you so.
I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you very much for what you've done, Jesse.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
You know, what you guys were talking about with Rudiak, I think that's the most ironic thing. That was it General Ramey? Was that who held the paper? General Ramey used your father as the fall guy, switching the debris with the weather balloon that was clearly identifiable, even though with these radar reflectors, I'm sure an intelligence officer, a major at that, knows exactly what they look like. Nonetheless, he sadly had to be the fall guy for General Ramsey. But nonetheless, Ramey's might be the actual person who can eat his own words, because as you've been saying lately, with the technology, we've been able to find more and more words on there, and words like wreckage, bodies, victims, craft, all of that has been found, and I'm hoping that we can one day really get to it where the whole note in his hand when he's sitting there posing with your father can be finally read. I'm really waiting for that day. That would be great if that's what finally, blows this open. The cover of the Roswell Daily Record would end up being the disclosure document itself. How great would that be?
Well, amazing. That memo of General Ramey was holding just blows the cover story of a balloon out of the water. So that says it right there. And
it even has a section on the cover story.
Yeah. So, but I saw my dad holding that wreckage, that balloon target, radar target, and the look on his face kind of said it all. Says, "You got to be kidding me! This is not what I brought here." But he went along with the story.
Jesse, is that Thomas Dubos in the other press release photo holding it too, or standing by it?
Yeah, Dubos is in there too. I'm not sure which one it is, but he's in there also.
That's what I thought.
It's sad what they did then, but before we went on break, we were talking about the Battle of L.A., and I just want to talk a little bit more about that and some other of these cases that were happening before Roswell. First of all, Battle of L.A., 1942. Anybody out there listening right now can look up, type it in, Battle of L.A., and you will find the cover of the L.A. Times, which shows all these searchlights pointing at some object. Allegedly, we apparently did bring down a couple of those crafts. One supposedly landed inside the Pacific Ocean. Another landed in the San Bernardino Mountains after we shot them down. The other one that was in the photograph apparently was not damaged. I don't know why. I don't know about that. 1941, a year before this happened, there was this Cape Girardi incident in Missouri, which Stan Friedman and some more people recently uncovered. And what basically happened in this incident was there was this pastor, a priest, and he was called in the middle of the night, or someone came to his door and said, there was been a plane crash in the next town over. Would you please come and read these people the last rites? He got there, and sure enough, it was no plane crash that he'd ever seen, and the victims were not human. One of them was actually still alive, and then in a matter of minutes, the military comes, they surround the area, they cordon everyone off, and they tell everyone not to speak about it. Apparently, there was even a photograph taken of this being held up with a military guard on each side. He was told not to talk about it, and apparently that photograph was confiscated. Some fake ones have come since, but nonetheless, we can never confirm what was real, what was not. But we do know that this story has been corroborated by more than one person now, and that was 1941. Then we know of the Mexico crash in the 70s, which they call the Mexico Roswell. It's actually been shown on the History Channel. There was another one in Peru in 96, 97, like you heard at the citizen hearing, which was shot down. In the Disclosure Project, Dr. Greer in the early 2000s, late 90s, and in 2001 when he held it at the National Press Club, had one of the witnesses who was a Marine who actually went to the craft after it was shot down and saw that this orange ooze was kind of oozing out of it. I thought it was just really strange. So this Roswell was not the only crash and retrieval. I wanted to ask both of you this. What other crashes do you know of other than what I mentioned? Crash and retrievals.
I know that there's, just what I've been reading, just like only know what I read in the papers, but I think in Russia they had some crash retrievals going on too, and this, like I was going to say, this is not just the United States, but this is worldwide. So it's not just here. So other countries have the same debris, and they're all kind of, sequestering this stuff, I guess.
And about Russia, you are so true. Stalin, after Roswell, was apparently really jealous. His intelligence confirmed that we had retrieved something exotic. He ordered his pilots, just like we did, to shoot them down at all costs. Apparently in, I think it was early 51, maybe it was the late 40s, I'm not sure, but it was right around there. There was this base called Kapustin Yar, and what they did was there was a sighting. There was an incident where there was this cigar-shaped UFO that was maneuvering in exotic ways, and they sent up a jet. And ultimately what happened is they collided. I guess the jet fired a missile, the object did something to evade it, and they collided, both crashed. Stalin didn't care about the Russian soldier that died, but he did care about the craft. And underneath where this landed, they ended up turning it into like the modern day Russian Area 51. And just like you said, that was just one crash. Then there was the Tunguska crash, which is possibly another incident in the early 1900s. And there's so many more. Recently, we were just joined by Preston Dennett, MUFON researcher of 23 years, author of 15 books, 2 more coming out. One of them is my absolute favorite. It is the UFOs over California. He also has UFOs over New Mexico, UFOs over New York, and several more. Preston, we are speaking with Dr. Marcel and Denise Marcel, and I wonder if you had any questions, because I know you've done a lot of research in Roswell.
I have. Hi, guys. It's an honor to speak with you. It's really thrilling. I think you've had really awesome experience dealing with this, and I have a lot of questions. But my first question is, would you go forward again with all this information, or do you regret ever having gone forward with all of this, or is this something that you wish you had kept private?
No, there's nothing I would do differently. When my dad started talking about this in 1978 with Stan Friedman, I figured, if he's talking about it, it must be okay to talk about it. But he carried the fire for a long time, and then when he died, then I started catching the attention at that point. But no, I have no regrets at all about releasing what I know about this, which is, like I said, I'm just an observer and not a researcher.
Right. Overall, would you say that the response from people is positive and that people believe what you're saying, or do you get a lot of skepticism?
Actually, most people believe this, and as a matter of fact, I was in the military for years, and I had flag rank officers sit me down and want to talk to me about what happened in Roswell. So no, even the military was open with my the discussion and the explanations.
Wow, yeah. I'm surprised that this is still going on as far as, a cover-up. And I think the work that you're doing is crucial to ending this. And I'm wondering what you think about how long this information is going to be denied by the government or whoever is actually covering this up. I'm not sure it's exclusively, our government in terms of, senators and the president and all that. But I'm wondering how long do you think this can go on?
Well, I have no idea. I wish it would end. I wish they would come out and spill the beans. Like if the study program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, would come out with a definite positive extraterrestrial signal from elsewhere, that would help because people would then know for sure that they're intelligent beings elsewhere, not just here on Earth, and that if they're there, maybe they've been here too. So that would, things like that would help if they came out with a positive extraterrestrial signal.
A few weeks ago, Preston and I were saying how great would it be if one day we can all visit the Roswell wreckage in a true museum. We after all deserve it, and, and that's what we really need to get out there to happen. Richard Dolan we had on not too long ago, and he always says disclosure is impossible, yet it's inevitable. When it's going to happen, I don't know. I was hoping in the 88, that joint USSR and America, USA disclosure video that was aired was going to do something, and it didn't. Then we talked about it in the 90s. Every year, every decade, it's always, we're on the brink of it. We're 5 minutes to the midnight disclosure clock, and we're always shot down by this. And like we've been all saying before you came on, Preston, that sadly we need to have more people pushing this. We need to get the people to do it because sadly the government isn't going to do it. Now, Dr. Marcel, what would you like to see happen in the future in your legacy with your father and with everything that's happened?
Well, I would like our government to finally come out and to give the details of extraterrestrial craft, what they look like, that they do not seem to be malevolent or anything like that, but that they're here, that if you don't be scared of them, but we really don't control our skies, that like we'd like to. But I'd like for the government to go ahead and still the being, say yes, this is them. We've had some contact with them. They do not seem to be malevolent, so nothing to be afraid of. As a matter of fact, the Vatican released a statement saying that it would not interfere with your religious beliefs if you believe in extraterrestrials too. So the Vatican is in on this now also. And as a matter of fact, they may know more about this than most people do.
Well, the government is still actively covering this up, and I'm wondering, have you ever experienced any harassment or reprisals of any kind talking about this stuff?
No, I have not. I've had some strange phone calls on occasion, but there's never been anything with threat content at all. But so I guess some people have been threatened, but not this one, not me.
Well, my guess is if they threatened you, it would only create more publicity towards Roswell.
Yeah, right. It's too late. I already told everybody what I'm doing. So I can't really add or subtract you. This is what it is. Take it or leave it. And so it's too late to really make me change my story.
All right. Well, this is the one case that almost wasn't covered up. I mean, with the newspaper article and all the witnesses talking, and in the beginning they were threatening people and harassing them. And of course, I'm sure there was some suspicious deaths involved with all this. So I don't know if the government is still actively covering up Roswell or not, but it appears not, because the other witnesses are not being harassed either.
Well, I think that it's an agency in our government that's keeping this covered up, and it may not have anything to do with the political part of our government or the military. But there's got to be something, a hidden government, a black government, that's been described is holding his secret there, and so far they're not willing to talk about it or release it.
You know, sadly, we had lost Denise Marcel, but she is finally back. Denise, we were just having some great conversations about what we would like to happen and how we can get this out there. And sadly, the black government, Dr. Marcel, that you're talking about, it's ironic you mentioned that, because a lot of people that worked at Area 51 and other these top bases, Dulce, New Mexico being another, they refer to these guards as Black SEALs or other. I think that they're more than likely, these people are, like Blackwater USA or some other private military contractors. But on that note, it looks like we got another caller. Area code 650. Where are you calling from and what's your name?
This is Bob Evans calling from California.
Bob, it's a pleasure to have you. Do you have a guest for? Do you have a question for any of our guests or hosts?
Well, you were talking about Roswell there. The research we had done, there was actually 3 ships that crashed there on that night.
Yeah, I have heard that.
Yeah. I was on another show a year back with Art Campbell, and he brought that up, that there were actually 3. And also, what was it, the late Colonel Philip
Corso. Yeah, we were talking about him, and we also talked about this FBI document that's been circulating recently about the 3 crap. You know, if you hang on one second, we actually seem to have yet another caller. This time, I see the caller is an unknown number. Unknown number, where are you calling from and what's your name?
I'm calling from Philippines, and my name is Robert Dave Milan, and I'm calling in because you mentioned Tunguska just a few minutes back in time, so I wanted to say something about that.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember being on board a craft that detonated over Tunguska in 1908, and I remember it was summertime, and I remember it was either June or July, and we was leaving from Andromeda Galaxy, and we was leaving from a planet named Xenon. I was half, like a, I don't know how to spell it out in English exactly, but it's like a bioprinted body. It is half biological. And I was reincarnated in that body technology with the help of the technology at that planet. And we leave. I was a beam ship or a spacecraft engineer, if you like. I had special sensors in my arms that can know the health of the spacecraft at any given time. And I was there. I always stayed with that group of scientists, and my captain was my best friend. And my captain, by the way, he had a bird on his left shoulder at all times. It was a talking bird. And anyway, so we left from Xenon, and it was a science people from that planet was interested in to take samples of some seeds or some plants, or I do not exactly know the purpose of that. But there was some science people that wanted to go to this planet at the time and take some samples, DNA samples. So I was just...
I've heard actually similar stories of this, of people who have claimed to have past lives as ETs. And I actually did interview a lady who said that she was one of the ETs in a past life who was on the Roswell crash. But yeah, I'm wondering, did you have a question for our guest tonight?
No, not really. I just hear you talk about Tunguska, mentioning Tunguska, so I just wanted to call in and say that I have memories of that of being aboard in craft over in 1908 before it detonated, and I also want to add that not so far ago, I actually got proof of being from another planet, and that proof is very, very solid. It is not pictures. It is not a video. It is. I was commenting soon a year ago on a Norwegian homepage that I do not own or that I do not have control over about magnetic highway, and about 9 months. Yeah. Anyway, 9 months later,
we're going to actually have to get back to our guest.
Yes.
But I appreciate your calling in, and your story is very interesting. And
Robert Merlin actually has an amazing stories to tell. I'm glad this is getting to the world. We're actually having a worldwide audience. Robert's going to have to come back one time, and he's going to have to tell his whole story because he's got endless amount of stuff. But we got about a little less than 20 minutes left on the show, and I want to get back to, we got Denise and Jesse. This is, a rare moment for all those out there listening. I mean, like I said before, this is Roswell is really a household name. And whether people believe in UFOs or not, they know the word Roswell because it's just truly associated with one of the biggest events of all kind.
I think it is the biggest UFO event in human history.
I agree with you. When else has the military come forward and said they had a craft? And people forget one thing. They always look at the Roswell Daily Record the next day when it showed, okay, this was a Ramey Ente's Roswell story, and shows the famous photo with the weather balloon debris. But that same day, all around the world, the newspapers were also talking about Roswell. So let's just say on the West Coast, when the newspapers were coming out, as time was going, east, everything was still being published. If you look up newspapers from July 8th, 1947 from different cities, you're going to see a whole lot of stories talking about the military recovering a craft. I know, Preston, you've actually seen a lot of those newspapers. Can Dr. Marcel, can you tell us, have you seen those too? And maybe, Preston, maybe you could tell us about which ones you've seen.
Well, now that you say so, my dad was on the reception of a lot of these calls and reports here. As a matter of fact, he got a call from somebody in China in 1947. That was quite a long-distance phone call. But he, his office staff got word of that, and they said, well, he's called Publicity Marcel now. It's a joke, but he actually got somebody in China who tried to get a hold of him, or did get a hold of him to talk about the Roswell crash.
Very interesting stuff. So here's a question for you, Dr. Marcel. Have you ever seen a UFO yourself?
I've seen lights in the sky. Whatever that means. I related earlier that I saw a light in the desert over a rock that should not have been there, but who knows what it was. It was a no-fly zone, and it was a visible light. It should not have been there, but that's the only thing I've seen.
What about you, Denise? Have you ever had a UFO experience other than?
I when I was little, when we would go camping it was literally our backyard, I saw something. I mean, it was really far up in the sky, and because I know that we would look up there all the time and try to is that a satellite that we're looking at? What are we looking at right now? Because I mean, it was the Montana sky. It was just so big and vast. I swear I saw something. It was, so long ago, but it looked like something that was. It did the movements that it did. It kind of zigzagged, and I'm like, well, that was just kind of odd.
Well, you kind of grew up knowing this stuff is real. I mean, considering your unique situation, I mean, is that true? Have always been a reality with you.
It's always been a reality with me. I've never questioned it. I mean, it just is. We're not alone. That I know for sure. We're not.
Right. So, in my own family, being a UFO researcher, still some of my family members don't believe in it and look at me with kind of embarrassment. And I'm wondering, have you ever been embarrassed by being involved with this field, or have you ever, you know what I mean? I can clear a room real quick if I.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, I've definitely felt uncomfortable. It's because you wonder how people are going to perceive you. It's like they're going to think like, well, she's kind of out there, or it's like, well, it makes sense. I mean, sometimes it is hard, but for the most part, in this day and age, it's a lot more open. I mean, people are more accepting of. They're more willing to listen. I think,
right.
Which is
yes, they are.
You know, the irony about this is there's this circus that's like we all talked about last hour, how this ridicule goes on about this topic. But if you ask people, I just generally ask people, believers or non-believers, hey, have you ever seen a UFO? And you'd be surprised how many people say yes. Well, yeah, they'll say, as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago I was camping and I saw this. Or I was driving to this state and I saw this. And there's so many stories, but yet these people, out of fear of ridicule, are not reporting them or not talking about them. And we're truly hoping we could change that. And I think the times are finally coming to where we can change that. Denise, you know this we go to this media group by Stephen Bassett, who's led the disclosure hearings, the citizen hearing, and we were talking about last night about what's coming, the times, and what else we can do to finally push this out there. But Senator Gravel, his closing statement that he said off the panel after the hearing in a video that's available on YouTube, he truly believes that extraterrestrials are there. He said no doubt about it that extraterrestrials are real and that there's a cover-up. I mean, to convince him in a matter of 5 days, when he came in as probably the biggest skeptic of the group, versus the way he was at the end, just goes to show that if anybody actually pays attention to the evidence, it's there. It's always in front of them. But as Stan Friedman always says, they always have the attitude of, don't bother me with the facts, my mind is made up. And that's the sad part about it. But nonetheless, yeah, we're finally in that stage, though, where people are starting to open up a little more and tell stories that they didn't want to tell. And I know, Jesse Marcel, Dr. Marcel, you have done a great service to this, and so is your father, by telling the story and by keeping it alive, especially in your book, which I'm going to plug in again right now, Roswell Legacy, available at all major, outlets such as Amazon.com. I believe Barnes & Noble. You could also get it there. I've seen it before. Do you plan on writing any more, by the way?
No, I think that's it. That was I shot my block, and that was it. But
I just wanted to mention that.
Denise is going to get to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to let people know we're going to be in Roswell, so he's going to be signing books there too.
Oh, fantastic!
That's right. It's the anniversary coming up in a couple of weeks, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Yes.
What did you think of the movie Roswell? I wasn't, I thought it was actually pretty good in that it portrayed sort of the feeling of the whole incident well, but it was mostly, about your father. So I'm wondering, what is your thoughts on the movie Roswell?
Well, Paul Davis did a good job on it, and he used poetic license to make it more interesting than it would have to be. But he talked about how I kept a piece of it and I had to give it back, but I didn't. I didn't do that. Didn't keep any of it. And they also had a Air Force reunion of the 509th someplace, and I don't think that reunion ever happened. But anyway, there's poetic license there, but it just made a good story better.
Hey, and if you don't blink, you might see me too. I'm in there as the waitress.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But don't blink.
Great.
That's right. She's in there too. But what you're talking about, I think the giggle factor of this thing is beginning to finally fade away, so that people feel more comfortable in talking about things like this.
We recently re-released a documentary, The Alien Human Project. It's available for free for all those out there who are listening. It's on Third Phase of Moon YouTube. It's a great documentary documenting Dr. Lear's work. And I wanted to ask you, Denise and Dr. Marcel, are you familiar with Dr. Lear's work, and what's your take on alien abduction?
Well, yeah, I know Dr. Lear quite well, and I've seen some of the artifacts that he's retrieved, and I have to say that some of them are very interesting. And I think they need to do, and I think they're conducting some isotopic research on some of these to see if they contain strange isotopes of metals or material that probably are foreign to our solar system. I know Roger Lear quite well.
Yeah, he is a great friend of Third Phase of Moon and a personal friend of mine, and we always talk about this stuff. And each year, as technology gets better for us, just like you said, he's able to look more and more into these things. And one of the recent things that he found was that these are emitting a radio frequency that's consistent with deep space, which means somewhere in deep space something is receiving a signal. I mean, if this isn't the smoking gun, what is?
What if it's the new quantum entanglement signal?
It's there, Well,
have you heard about that?
No, actually, I've not been familiar with that one.
It's a new signal they found that when they take this proton or something of an atom and they flip it over, it doesn't matter if the other one that's quantumly entangled to it is on the other side of the universe.
Quantum entanglement. Yes, I'm familiar with that. And even in the Big Bang, when it first happened, every particle in the Big Bang or soon-to-be particle is entangled. So that means we're related to everything in the universe. In other words, we're all kind of one in the universe itself. It's quantum entanglement, transmits information faster than the speed of light.
That's right, and you're hitting a nail right on the head right there. Everything is, this oneness movement is actually starting to grow bigger, and one of the things Dr. Greer mentioned is that things can actually travel at the speed of thought, and there's this consciousness that everyone's linked up to, and that's why there's certain memories that can be transferred down through just by DNA. And I think the more that comes out from this is amazing. There was this documentary, Thrive, made by the Procter & Gamble heirs, and they basically linked up everything with this vortex. I don't remember the name of it, but I thought it was just really interesting because it talks about this quantum entanglement and how everything from the single atom to our human cell, to the Fibonacci sequence, to the sun, to the solar system, to the galaxy. Everything's interrelated and intertied in. And it wouldn't be surprising if that's what we were to come down to and realize.
Well, there is global consciousness, and we're all kind of in it together.
I agree.
I'm sorry, I got one more question for Dr. Marcel, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I think you probably were familiar with, I think History Channel did a run on this a while back where they suggested that your I-beam was a piece of balsa wood with the, sticky Christmas tape on it. And my question to you is, have you, before you were 12 years old and held this, had you ever worked with balsa wood before?
Oh, I built models all the time, airplanes. So, no, I'm quite familiar with balsa wood. But this was not wood. This was metal.
That's what I thought. But I just wanted to ask for the listeners to just get that clear because of that suggestion.
Yeah,
torque wood.
What's interesting about what's going on in New Mexico? I mean, there are UFO crashes across the United States and the world, of course. But and I've been doing a lot of research on this, and as far as I can tell, New Mexico has more UFO crashes than any other place in the entire world. And I'm wondering why you think that is.
Well, back in the 40s, that's where we were doing a lot of atomic research, at Los Alamos. And that's where we first detonated the first plutonium bomb there in New Mexico in July of 1945. And so it's got to get somebody's attention.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, a lot of researchers have noticed that the modern era of UFOs coincide exactly with the atomic age. And as far as I'm concerned, yeah, that's the exact reason why New Mexico is such a major UFO magnet, is because of the research going on at Los Alamos.
And it makes complete sense because when an atom bomb is detonated, we have this chain reaction that goes on for infinity. And as Stanton Friedman says, the way he exactly puts it is that basically the children have found the matches. You know, a primitive society is us who just went through World War II, 50 million people we killed, you know, humans killing each other, and now we have the device that can decimate the entire world, you know, in literally the click of a button. Uh-oh, what are we doing with it? And I think they're more worried about what's going on with our society as a whole. You know, we're coming down to the last couple of minutes, and I wanted to give the last couple callers that we have on, see if they want to have any questions. Back to you, caller 650. Forgive me for not knowing your name, but do you have any questions for our guests?
Not really. I'm just glad I finally got onto your show tonight.
Oh,
this is
excellent. Well, join us every week. You know, I'd love to tell everyone while we're on the air real quick, just what's happening next week. We're going to be joined by Kathleen Martin and Denise Stoner. They're alien abduction specialists, and Kathleen Martin's actually Betty Hill's niece. For all you out there who don't know, Betty and Barney Hill. Yes, Betty and Barney Hill story was the first major abduction story that came out in 1961. It's going to be a great show. Month of July is going to be just as great of a month. You know, Stan Friedman is going to be joining us. We're going to have, who else? There's so many more. Carrie Cassidy, William Henry, and John Searle, the godfather of energy, is going to be back. But that's real quick again. Also, if anybody's captured anything amazing, make sure you submit it to Third Phase of Moon via Skype or Facebook. We still have our competition going on. We would love to see your footage. 2 categories. First, of an object. If you captured a UFO on a video or still, send it to us. And if you captured a being, an alien, a ghost, an interdimensional, whatever it is, an anomalous being on film, we'd love to see it. And the winners are going to get an autographed copy of one of Preston's books, your choice. He's got 15 amazing UFOs over New Mexico. Would be very fitting for this show, but I'd like just to let everyone out there know that. Now, like I said, we got a couple minutes left, and I know Blake, sadly, he was, as a matter of fact, Blake is just calling back in, and we got only a couple minutes left. And Blake, I know you had some burning questions right before you got disconnected. Now you're back on. Do you want to go ahead and ask before we go off in a couple minutes?
Well, I know we're running short on time. I just wanted to, thank Bob Evans for coming on the show, asking some questions. He came on the show. He had some questions, but he did some amazing insight in regards to the SOHO imagery coming out from NASA of massive ships next to the sun. Bob Evans, thanks again for coming on. Wayne from Hawaii asking questions. We appreciate his insight. The Marcells. Wow, this has been an amazing 2 hours of incredible information. We're going to be reposting this on YouTube, Third Phase of Moon, so the world could see it. Everybody's listening live, but it's going to have another life on its own on Third Phase of Moon. And Dr. Jandy Alive, thanks for hosting the show, and Preston Dennett for some more insight from the UFO investigator.
Of course, and we still got a couple of minutes left. I'd like again everyone to know the Roswell Legacy book is available, so please get it if you want to know the true Roswell story of following the Marcel line, the family line. Dr. Jesse Marcel, I want to ask you back to the metal and the debris you saw. Have you seen anything in the decades since this incident that has resembled it, possibly? Maybe that...
Well, as far as the metal goes, I guess Mylar is probably the closest thing that this looked like. Of course, we didn't have Mylar back in 1947 either, but Mylar would be the closest thing, and I've never seen anything that resembled the I-beam, so.
Except for the other people that are actually recognizing the symbols, which I think is great because all this does is confirm the story. And I think it's amazing how all these people have finally come forward talking about Roswell. Better late than never. And I'm excited to see if anybody else is going to leave a memo like Walter Hott did. Anything else before we go off air? Denise, you want to say anything else?
If anybody knows something, come out and tell it to everybody. Let us know.
Yeah, that.
I want to thank Denise, too. Thank you, Denise.
Maybe I could tell you guys that these ships are still coming into our system on a daily basis. The SOHO images are showing up every day. They're huge.
Wait, it's called SOHO images?
Yes, the SOHO satellites, the 2 of them. I did a show for Third Phase of Moon the other day, We've been collecting these images since at least 1998. They're huge starships. And a lot of the images show them coming right out of warp, just on our side of the sun.
It looks like we are finally out of time. I'd like to thank Dr. Genesee Marcel and Denise Marcel for joining us right here at Third Phase of Moon Radio Live. Everybody out there, watch Third Phase of Moon on YouTube. Join us again next week, Thursdays, 5 to 7 Pacific Standard Time, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you next time.